Hello, my name is Christopher Flanagan, Superintendent of Radnor Township Police. I'd like to welcome you to today's program. We have a very important topic to talk about and also share information and resources that are available right here in Radnor and also the entire greater Philadelphia area. But before we get into the topic, I'd like to introduce my guest, Robin Burstein.
Hi.
How are you? Who is the Senior Associate Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League, sometimes known to other people as the ADL. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think this is a very important topic for people in every household to have a discussion and listen to. But one of the things is I think a lot of people think is the ADL or Anti-Defamation League, is that just for Jewish issues or for extremist issues? Could you tell me a little bit about what the ADL does here locally?
Sure. So the mission of the ADL is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. Our founders over 105 years ago knew that it wasn't enough just to fight one type of hate and one type of prejudice. That in order to be successful fighting any hate or any prejudice, we had to fight against all of it. And so that is what the ADL does. Locally in our region, we fulfill this mission through education programs, through working with law enforcement and doing law enforcement trainings, to advocacy, all types of initiatives in order to reach that goal.
So a very important point, and obviously an extremely important mission over 100 years ago. But what you're saying is it's not just for the Jewish community. The ADL helps take the mission of anti-bias, hate, and extremism and really teach, educate, and help people who are actually afflicted. So it's also a proactive, but it also can be a reactive source as well.
Exactly. As I said, we do have a special emphasis on anti-Semitism. We've been tracking anti-Semitism since 1979, incidents of anti-Semitism, so that we can see the movement and see where things are standing in any given moment in history. However, we stand for and fight for the rights of all. And if anyone has an incident, even if it's not anti-Semitic, if it's racist or if it's anti-LGBT or any of those kinds of things, any type of marginalized community that gets discriminated against, ADL is there.
Okay, so you guys are really busy. Tell me that you said you track. So it's more than just opinion. You guys are in the forefront of tracking incidents, collecting data, and other things. And then how does that help? I mean, that sounds very official, almost like the FBI or something who really tracks and monitors things. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So when incidents get reported to us or we read about incidents in the news and we stay abreast of any type of bias incident that happens and we keep track of it, for a purpose. You can't change and you can't improve what you don't measure. And so in order to be able to implement activities that will improve the culture and the climate of our society, we need to track what's going on to be able to see where we need help.
From a tracking standpoint, our local area, Wayne, Radnor, Lower Merion, right to the border, what type of information do you have locally here?
Unfortunately, I don't have the stats for just that area. However, our region, our ADL region in this area is Greater Philadelphia, which includes Delaware and the southern part of New Jersey, the eastern part of Pennsylvania. And so in that area, we have seen a 43% increase last year in 2017 over 2016 of anti-Semitic incidents that have happened.
Well, that's seems like a very significant increase or spike.
It is. It's a little bit lower than the national average. Nationally, last year we saw a 57% increase.
Wow. Well, that's obviously very concerning.
Now, weigh that against the FBI stats that came out a few weeks ago. The FBI put out their stats, and so there's a difference between what ADL tracks and what the FBI tracks. The FBI tracks hate crimes. ADL tracks incidents. Incidents could be a crime, but they're not necessarily a crime. Okay, so the FBI stats actually came out and there was a 17% jump last year in 2017 over 2016 according to the FBI stats in hate crimes overall. And according to the FBI stats, a 37% increase in incidents against Jews or Jewish institutions.
So that's obviously concerning all the way across the board, but obviously the incidents, could you maybe define what you track, because the two different numbers, but tell me what an incident would be to the ADL.
An incident could be anything from harassment, vandalism, assault. They usually fall into those categories. So in the United States, we have free speech, and so it's not a crime if I were to say something inappropriate to you. You know, we talked before this show about inappropriate jokes and things like that. If I were to say something that offended you, that's not a crime. However, some things do rise to the level of crime, like vandalism or assault. And so that's where the difference comes with what the FBI tracks and what the ADL tracks. We track every incident that gets reported or recorded in some way to us, and the FBI tracks crimes.
Let's talk about an incident that actually brought you and I together on the phone, working to try and solve a problem and educate the community. Right here in Radnor, on Mischief Night, I want to let the audience know that what we believe at this time to be a group of juveniles went out and wrote an N-word on a car and shaving cream, and also used anti-Semitic pictures and words on some different vehicles and some different trees. It was all done in shaving cream or some type of soap form, but the information got to the ADL, and the ADL reached out to us, and we asked to get best practices to what can we do about this. Obviously, the police department took it extremely seriously, documented, photographed, and attempted to prosecute the subjects. After looking at it and speaking to you about it, there were some misspellings and some other things which generically made us believe it was juvenile related, and also in shaving creams. On those vehicles, the door handles also had shaving cream put underneath it. But I think there's two issues that came out. One is it's serious, and even if it's juveniles, it's still a crime to deface somebody's property, and things can become categorized as a hate crime if they're targeting somebody or trying to intimidate them. So the police part of it, I think a lot of people understand, or maybe they don't, that juveniles can be affected by this. But I think you guys from the ADL gave us some resources and some things to share with the community as a whole about how to stop this practice and how to educate everybody. Could you just share what you sent us?
Sure. If I can remember everything I sent you. So one of the first things that we always recommend when an incident like this happens, either at a school or in a community, is that there's a statement made by those who have authority. And I believe that you guys put out a statement saying, you know, here's this incident that happened. It in no way reflects the feelings of our entire community. This is not what our community stands for. And so having that statement come out really helps those who are victims to feel validated and comfortable and safe. And that's a very important piece. Then we also shared some of the ADL resources that are on our education page on parents having conversations with kids about these issues, about racism, about anti-Semitism, etc., and some resources that teachers can use in the classroom, how people can respond when these kinds of incidents happen. Now, depending on what level that incident is, you know, call the police, get the police on your side and find out whether or not there's any assistance the police can give you. If it's something that you want to call the ADL about, if it happened in a school or some kind of an institution, then we can provide education resources so that there can be conversation and discussion, and make it into a teachable moment. Because we're not the punishment people, right? We're not here, we're not the authorities who tell people what to do about it. But we try to, when we find out about these incidents, we try to help whoever is in charge turn it into a teachable moment so that these incidents don't continue to happen.
A teachable moment, and that segues into one of the things that struck me on the information you sent. And that information is posted on the Radnor Township website. It was done on October 31st, the posting. Mischief Night was the night before, and we got that right out once we were able to get it, and it goes over some of the things. But one of the articles was about a teachable moment, but I think a lot of things come from the household. And one of the article's resources that you sent was about jokes and how things can be misconstrued to make people feel. Could you just touch on that?
So, you know, inappropriate jokes, sometimes anti-Semitism or racism or other types of isms or prejudice get, hidden in a joke or a slur. Oh, I didn't mean it, I was just joking. Well, it's not a joke when it hurts someone. It's not a joke when language like that can lead to people feeling hurt and misunderstood. It's not a joke because words matter, and inappropriate language can lead to inappropriate actions, and we don't want that to happen.
Okay, and I think that that's very important, that even a joke can possibly lead to the results of people getting their property, defamed by some type of graffiti, racial slur, whatever it may be, or just emblem that symbolizes something of hate or a bad time in past history. And it can even be built from a joke. So we did take that matter very seriously, and we keep our eyes out for it. And I really appreciate the one point is the ADL was also willing to come out and speak to some of the people who I would call victims. Luckily, they weren't physically hurt, but emotional hurt or not feeling safe in your own home really has an impact. And your agency also offered to support our system and even come out and speak with the people who were affected by those words and emblems that were posted just this mischief night. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate that. So I do want to let you know, in the audience, if there is something, the Anti-Defamation League has a lot of resources. They're not enforcement, and I think that was a very key point. They're here to support, help heal, educate, and set a pattern for excellence so people understand that. And it really is important to start from home with the juveniles and ourselves as adults. So I think that was a very interesting point that you guys offer, and I would like the community to be aware of that. What kind of groups do you go out and share information with in a proactive way?
Any kind of group. So community groups, schools, all kinds of groups. Anyone who would ask us, that's a significant group that would gather a group of people together who might want to know about hate in our community, we would come out and do. When it comes to this type of an incident like that happened on Mischief Night or anything that the police get involved with law enforcement, we do a lot of training with law enforcement on recognizing a hate crime, reporting hate crimes, and then we do work with law enforcement in their relationship to the community and recognizing how they are perceived by the people that they're serving.
Okay, so that's really important information that even a local civic group, a school, a church, a synagogue, whatever, could have the opportunity to have the ADL come out, give live information in a proactive measure to help groups or masses of people not even get into a situation or be aware of how something that they never thought was offensive could be offensive. Right. and do something proactively. And I think that's a key point to stress is we, as the police department, like to stop crimes before they happen. It seems the ADL would like to stop hurt or pain from comments, other things, or obviously clearly crimes you wouldn't want to have happen, but there's a way to stop that by being proactive. So do ask the audience to go to their website, take a look at all the opportunities and free training that they offer, and make this a better community.
And I'd like to just jump off of something that you said, because I didn't mention religious communities and faith-based communities that we would provide services to. In addition to coming out and speaking and talking to those communities, we also offer what we call protecting your religious institution. And so important in today's day and age, when just a month ago or so, the incident happened in Pittsburgh at the Tree of Life Synagogue. On our website, it's called Protecting Your Religious Institution is the name of the resource. And we will also come out if a few churches, mosques, synagogues, whatever in a community want to get together and get a group together for training, we'll actually even come out and do a training on protecting your religious institution.
That's very important. And again, not just for the Jewish faith, all representations are covered by this training and it benefits all of them. So I think that's very admirable as well to be proactive in this time and age. One of the reasons that we have a good knowledge of what the ADL does here at the Radnor Township and the Radnor Police Department is we learned about the training that you offer police officers. And I believe the ADL is the largest non-governmental trainer of law enforcement agencies in the United States.
Correct.
So that's a pretty impressive statement.
It is.
I was wondering if you could tell us about your anti-bias training program for law enforcement agencies and what its purpose is.
Yeah. Managing Implicit Bias is the anti-bias training program for local law enforcement. And it goes beyond diversity training. A lot of people hear the language diversity training. It includes some diversity training. Diversity training is really about understanding other people's cultures and how other cultures relate to other people. Our program is managing your own bias on top of that. So it's helping law enforcement officials understand what their own biases are so that they can keep them in check when they're dealing with the community, thereby hopefully making the community feel safer when talking to a law enforcement official, making the community feel safer if they need to report a crime against themselves or something they may have witnessed. Many people who feel intimidated by law enforcement would be reluctant to report. And so this Managing Implicit Bias program is really intended to help law enforcement officials keep their own biases in check, to create a better relationship with the community that they serve so that everyone can be safer.
You said a lot, and I think it's so important. I want to let the audience know that every Radnor police officer under the authority of the Board of Commissioners has received this training, and as new officers come in, they will receive this training. It is a cost by the township, but they feel that it is critically important to support what Robin just reviewed for police officers, knowing how to treat the public, how to know about anti-bias training, and how to better help them do their jobs, to sympathize and be able to react to the community's needs, whoever that may be. Not only at the township did we take that to the police officers, they also had every employee in Radnor Township receive the same training. It's a different training program, but the same concepts are in there. Could you just tell us about the civilian one as well that you guys do?
So it's a World of Difference. It's called a World of Difference anti-bias training, and so we do a World of Difference anti-bias training for communities. We sometimes do it for businesses. We really are active with that program in schools with professional development for administrators and teachers and for peer leadership groups.
I think that the ability for everybody, especially in a municipality that sees every type of walk of life, they could be there for a building permit, a tax issue, or a police-related situation, that if we're all trained the best way possible, then it makes those citizens, or even if they're not citizens, feel more comfortable when they're talking to us and making sure that we're able to relate to their need in the best way possible. We're excited to have you. I believe we have you guys coming January 23rd to teach our new police officers and one or two who were missing during the other training. And we look forward significantly to that training. Is there a follow-up training to this, or is there a way to build on the initial trainings for the police, do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question. At this point, we don't have a follow-up training for that. What we would want to do is have refresher courses potentially and make sure that we train all the new people or anybody who missed it, like you said. But this is a fairly new program. It's about 2 or 3 years old, and so we are really just beginning to roll it out completely across the country. And as we find more need, we may develop more programming.
Well, we are extremely pleased with the results. I found it more than informative. I found it that you had to really look at yourself, look how you grew up, what your opinions are, and how to best treat those who we meet for the first time, because that is sometimes a difficult part of policing, is that first interaction. Sometimes when people are under stress or there's other things or there's cultural differences, it can, when you're trying to get to what the situation is, sometimes you have to understand the person before you can get to the situation.
And that is not the only training that we offer to law enforcement. So it's not a step 1 and step 2 necessarily, but we also offer a program called Law Enforcement in Society. Law Enforcement in Society brings law enforcement to the Holocaust Museum to see the relationship between the Nazi police and the community at that time, and to learn from that history, and then goes and delves into what should the relationship be between law enforcement and the communities in America today, and what the differences are. And so there are other programs. We bring in experts on extremism and terrorism to train law enforcement on how to respond to situations that happen in the community. So there's a variety of programs that ADL offers to law enforcement.
Robin, I want to ask you about the tracking that you mentioned and the statistics. A lot of times police have information and things. Do you collect just only police information, or are there other resources that you track the incidents that you talked about?
Actually, most of our incidents get reported by individual people. We do work with law enforcement. We do get some information from law enforcement for our audit and for our tracking. However, most times we hear from people about situations that have either happened to them or someone they know. And then we read, we see things in media, and we track those too.
I think as we wrap up, we've given our audience a phenomenal amount of information, resources, what the ADL's mission is. And it's not just for the Jewish community, it actually protects everybody. It educates and attempts to not have situations, which I think is so very important. In closing, could you just leave a message for our audience, what you think is important about all the things we talked about?
I think the most important thing that ADL recommends, or that we talked about, is for the community members, for everyone, to be aware of what's going on around them and to be an upstander and not a bystander. So as you talked about, when someone says an inappropriate joke or a slur, or when situations happen, when kids vandalize cars, that those around them, their parents, their friends, their teachers, anyone who's aware of the situation when it happens, stands up and says, "Do you realize what you just said? Do you understand that what you just did has an impact on other people?" Be an upstander, not a bystander.
I think that's a very important message. I'd like to thank Robin Burstein, the Senior Associate Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League of the Philadelphia Regional Office. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Chris Flanagan, Superintendent of Police, and I'll see you soon.